but I think it comes and goes in waves, right? And I think that's something that a lot of people that were there yesterday are going through. Moments of, a million scenarios running through your head, moments of just sheer grief, and then, moments of being able to, step aside for a second and look at what's in front of us today, that being the competition, and be able to find some solace in that, that little sense of normalcy. But then, obviously there's always that reminder that this isn't normal.
Yeah.
And it's not going to be normal for a while. Or ever in with respect to what happened.
Yeah. Lauren, how about you?
It definitely comes in waves. It's one of those things where you tend to potentially compartmentalize because we are out here in the thick of it and interviewing people and trying to get a pulse of the community. But, there can be moments where I'm fine, and then moments where you just kind of replay everything that happened and emotions just get the best of you. But everybody is checking on each other, and I think that that's really comforting, that, the community is really strong.
Yeah.
Even through, the unthinkable, which is what happened.
Tommy, you mentioned getting back to some sense of normalcy, and there was competition today. We're through 4 events. We got 2 more days of competition. Do you think that worked? Or do you think it, maybe worked is the wrong word. Do you think it had an effect or allowed people to maybe escape a little bit and forget about what was going on and enjoy themselves in spurts maybe?
I do.
What it was like for me.
Yeah, I do. And I want to make something very clear, because I think we've posted some videos to kind of discuss where our direction is. And one thing that kind of stands at the forefront of my mind is we want to help convey this weekend a little bit of what the atmosphere is and the energy and the emotion is on site, right? Because there is a difference. And there is oftentimes things lost in translation between what gets shown, what gets communicated digitally, and what's being experienced in real life, like, feet on the floor. And I will say this in broad brushstrokes: with every heat, I think there started to be a little bit more energy and more familiarity with the competition in terms of what we're used to seeing. And I think that was a representation of people starting to get picked up a little bit by it, right? And rightly so, the tone immediately was unlike anything I'd ever seen, and it was definitely morose and somber, but you did start to see it come back. And there were moments, I think, especially for the athletes, and everyone was different, because there were athletes that withdrew after competing in an event. Ultimately, it wasn't the healing place for everyone in the same way. But you started to see, I don't know if it's a light bulb go off, but athletes be like, this is the place that I go to find myself sometimes, and then we got to see that play out in real time. I think, just the difference between the first team heat and what we saw at Farrington Field today. Some healing, even if in the early stages, some grieving, all of that did take place, and there was, I do think people found some good out of that.
Yeah, and both of you were out there at Farrington Field, and on TV at least, it looked like the atmosphere was pretty good. The stands looked relatively full, a good crowd on hand. What was the atmosphere out there like? Did the sort of the somber mood from the stadium, from Dickies Arena, carry over? Because it did. You could tell. It just felt just off
Yeah.
watching.
I definitely think ending the day at Farrington Field was a moment to take that breath, because being in Dickies Arena and, I mean, just going through everything that's happened in the last, more than 24 hours, it felt strange that being in a condensed room, it was almost like people didn't know if they should cheer for the athletes. People didn't know if, they should celebrate. I don't even know if the athletes thought, these are uncharted waters. And as we said, everybody deals with emotion and processing grief differently. That I think once we got to Farrington Field, while everybody was still grieving, it was almost like being in an open space outside allowed for people to take that breath.
Oh yeah.
And it just, there was that glimmer of, I mean, not to talk specifically about competition, because I feel like I've been pretty open that right now grieving Lazar and remembering him as first in the competition, at least for me, is secondary. But seeing, the races between Alexis Raptis and Brooke Wells, and then Ricky Garrard, and some of those moments that just make you smile because it's a sport we love, were really highlighted there, even under the worst possible circumstances.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, go ahead, Tommy.
I was just say I would second that. I think there were little aspects of being outside that started to ease things a bit. The time where we are out there, like, honestly, and this sounds, maybe a little woo woo, but like just seeing the sunset, like being outside and seeing the golden hour, and like that, those little moments when you're like inside, and that's the thing about an arena, right? Like, it looks like that every single hour of the day, so it's easy to lose track. Like we got in there, I think we were walking into the arena at like 8:45 this morning.
Yeah.
And we left at 7:30 p.m. And it's like, if you don't step outside of the media pit, the concessions, all the things that are part of that stadium, you don't see the sun.
Yeah.
Like, and so stepping outside for a little bit, seeing the sunset, having some like fresh air, and just being outside felt good, like, at a very, base level. And then I think the nature of some of the tests at least the test outside was so simple. I think that also provided a little relief for people.
Yeah.
Talking to some of the athletes, being able to be in that simple test, they were able to be very present with what they were doing in that moment. And even just those little moments are moments that give you a little bit of separation from the moment, from what happened yesterday, even if it just gives you some perspective, to take a deep breath, hit pause, and then come back with a little bit more refreshed. And so I think we saw that play out, and I think we saw some moments of like people racing, and really
there's some good. You could see the excitement and sort of, use your word earlier, normalcy.
Yeah.
Kind of show up every now and then.
Yeah.
And it felt good.
These stands were at least on one of the main sides were really full. I think there were some logistical issues with getting fans in the arena. When we pulled up, there was a line like halfway around the field complex.
It was unbelievable. I don't think that they expected that many people to show up. It felt like a Friday Night Lights at a massive high school football.
It came off really well on television. Like, it looked good. It looked like everything was packed. And you too, you've mentioned there's a couple things that you both have mentioned. And the first, Lauren, was uncharted waters, and the other one was was grief. And it's interesting to me that how up in arms people get about one side or the other. No, you have to continue the competition. No, you have to shut it down. And there aren't. When it comes to that, I don't think there are any right answers. There's just less wrong answers. There's no.
Yeah. Everybody deals with this in their own way, and even like some athletes are deciding not to compete and that's the way they're grieving, and other athletes are deciding to compete and that is the way that they're grieving. And I think to say